Greetings, friends, and welcome back to the second episode of Incantus Phylacterium, the place I keep my words, my random rants and ramblings. Oh, my alarm says get up. Okay, so today's episode, what am I going to cover? What is a DreamWizard? Why do I call myself that? Other than purely branding purposes, which, you know, you got to call yourself something. It has meaning to me, so I'm going to attempt to explain that. Once again, I've got some raw notes here, but I'm going to try not to read them out verbatim, and we'll see how that goes. So first, I want to address the idea, you know, what am I going to cover here? What is a DreamWizard? But by way of addressing that, I'm also going to try and address, do I think I have magic powers? Do I think I communicate with spirits, or do I think God speaks to me? To answer those questions directly, I do not. Excuse me. I have no pretensions of actual supernatural abilities. Everything I'm doing is completely physical, normal, in the real world, all that good stuff. So I think a good place to start would be looking to explain myself is, what is the iconic representation of a wizard? And the first things that come to my mind are Gandalf from Lord of the Rings, and not only him, but Socrates of Athens, both of whom some people assert to be fictional characters. Gandalf more clearly so, but Socrates, we don't actually know if he lived, so to speak. All we've got is what is it, Plato or Aristotle's writings? I can't remember who was his student. I'm going to be embarrassed by that, and well, that's also what these videos are for, me embarrassing myself. So the iconic representation of a wizard, and what does that word actually mean? So wizard has as its root word the word wise, and originally, perhaps in Old English spelling, W-Y-S-E, wise. And that is also the root of the words wisdom and wizened, as in to grow old, or a person who is elderly. Looking at my notes. What does that mean physically? What do we see when we're looking at that idea? Well, a person who has reached an advanced age, perhaps a little stooped, walks with a staff, but most specifically the idea of perhaps a wrinkled, weathered, long-lived countenance, but the long gray beard as well being another sign of advanced age. So that's the kind of visual imagery. Say a wizard, Gandalf style, robe, staff, long gray beard, perhaps the pointy hat. But what about the behavior? What is the iconic behavior of a wizard? Well, a couple of things. They speak magic words or cast spells in say Dungeons and Dragons parlance, throwing fireballs, etc. But beyond that, they also seem to have access to, say, secret knowledge. They know things that other people don't. And I got my little puppy here. This is Peanut Butter. He's trying to get comfy while I sit in my chair. Yeah. So magic powers, know things that other people don't. And this is why I have notes. Oh, and the ability to, say, see the future, or at least divine things, see things hidden from others. In a very practical sense, these are seen perhaps, you know, iconically as magical powers, but they are in a sense the practical application of wisdom, of growing older. You get to a certain point in your life where you have experienced enough that you have wisdom. You have true wisdom. You are a wise one, and you know things that other people don't from experience. You have the ability to, say, understand from experience certain cause and effect that allows you to appear to predict the future. You know what's going to happen because you've seen it before many times, or you've seen similar things, and they give you that ability. But also the idea of say speaking magic words. What are truly magic words. Well, it's sharing useful wisdom, telling people things they do not know, telling people things they need to hear for their own sake or to accomplish their goals. There's a magic in the ability to communicate information and to have that impact on another person in a positive sense. So, and I'm glad I wrote this down too, because in effect, the scientific method itself, the embodiment or persona of being a scientist is basically applied wizardry. So a lot of things I do I just love the cleverness of it. So excuse me for being kind of giggly about it, but it is kind of magical to say, pour a bunch of things in a container and all of a sudden you've got something new. Maybe it's gunpowder, maybe it's a cleaning solution. The history of civilization, as much as it has been the development of economics and agriculture and industrialization and whatnot, but the history of civilization, the foundation of civilization has also been hygiene and the ability to sterilize our environments for surgery, to wash away our effluents in a central plumbing system. This is all applied wizardry. This is magical stuff. And so this is what I mean when I talk about magic. It's like, wow, it just blows your mind when you think about how all these things fit together. But I am ranting. So in psychology specifically, so this is the applied wizardry of psychology being a science, but also an art. And the art of psychology differs, say, from research scientific applications in that, being a research scientist, you want strict objectivity. You want to take the observer bias, observer influence out and just measure the thing you're looking at. So that's its own kind of thing. And that happens in psychology, but broadly speaking, in all the scientific disciplines. Psychology is a little different because you're dealing with people. So there's always a person who is the psychologist dealing with the person that they're talking to. Excuse me. Got the coffee burps this morning. Speaking of which, my mouth is getting a little dry here. Good old Folgers Black Silk. Hey, Folgers, I'd love to have you sponsor my channel, but I digress. Speaking of the practical application of psychology as a person, psychology is considered an art and a science at the same time because you have to bring yourself in interaction with another person. So there's going to be a finesse to it. And anyone who's watched my videos knows, I do so with varying degrees of success. I go off on my own tangents, but there's two things I always try to do. And I got these from, I believe it was, I want to say Carl Rogers, one of the humanistic psychologists. I'm going to look this up one of these days so I can clarify, because I keep forgetting who he was. He said you need to do two things whenever you're attempting to be therapeutic with someone, to engage with them for their benefit. Number one is be genuine. Bring yourself. Whatever you are, represent it accurately. Just be honest with people. So this is me. This is me. I may be good at some things and not at others. You're going to get the real me. You're going to get the truth in this interaction. The second thing is unconditional positive regard, meaning no matter what I do, I care that the other person is better off for having this interaction. So the focus is not on me self-aggrandizing or looking for validation from the other person necessarily, although we all need to be validated in our different ways. Hopefully I gain validation through being of benefit. So genuineness, unconditional positive regard, these are things I bring to the I've rambled on this long enough. We're going to move on. So am I a real wizard? That depends on what you mean by wizard. That depends on what you mean by real. But in my estimation, yes, but barely. I have, in my opinion, simply just barely acquired my robes, and still working on the beard. You can see So technically, yes, like I've joined the profession, so to speak, of wizardry in this sense, but I consider myself someone who has barely begun on this journey. You know, it's what have I got at this point? Like 50, 51. Next week will be 51 interviews. I hope over time to become much better at this. And in the sense of, like, going back to, say, the D&D analogy, you start off as a level 1 wizard. Hey, you're a wizard. But the longer you go, the more you practice, the more experience points you gain, the more powerful your abilities become. And so I'm hoping that in the process of this training, which I'm considering this training exercise, everything I do, my goal is to learn something new, learn a better way of doing it, refine my process, come to a better understanding of what the hell I do, because most of this is just intuitive. I just kind of, how did I develop my method? It's just what I do. I don't really understand it very well myself, and I hope someday to, you know, I've published a bunch of, well, I got a few here. I've published a bunch of books, and I hope someday to write my own book on what is my method, and more than that, not just to sell books, but to say, look, you can do this yourself. You don't need me. And that's a funny thing to say in terms of, it's like, hey, why bother watching my channel? Hopefully you find this interesting, and hopefully the viewer learns something from observing the process. They learn how to do it for themselves. You know, what I do is as magical as it seems. What was the phrase? Any sufficiently advanced science appears magical to the uninitiated. To I think the original phrase was something like, to less advanced cultures or civilizations, they see advanced technology beyond their ability as magic. So hopefully in the course of watching these videos and observing what I do, and hopefully someday in reading a book where I spell out the methodology more specifically, every single one of my viewers will be able to do this for themselves. I hope, honestly, to reach the point where there are too many people who want to speak with me that I just can't possibly talk to everyone. That has not been the case yet, but if this grows in popularity, then perhaps someday that will be a good problem to have. But I hope to continue to be of benefit, and most specifically to overcome the embarrassment of calling myself a wizard. Not just because it's silly, like, oh, sure, you're a wizard, but I mentioned this to an interviewee, a dreamer recently, that sometimes we all have imposter syndrome. And right now, I feel like calling myself a wizard, as funny as it is, and as much as I get a kick out of it, is a bit of a, feels narcissistic. It feels like I think I'm better than I am, which I want to actually become as good as I think I can be and hope I will be someday. So that is another episode of Incantus Phylacterium. I don't know if I mentioned that at the beginning, but anyway, the description's in the title and such. So I'll just say, thanks for listening to me rant, and we'll see you next time.